Join us now then on this trip through history to see what's happened to the 38th over those 25 years. 1979, we prepare for Scout Camp at East Nor Castle, and here we are at Wells Road loading all our supplies into a furniture removal lorry, which was the traditional way of getting to Scout Camp years ago, to take not only equipment but people as well. Health and safety hadn't been invented then, and so we prepare here for our 10 days in East Nor Castle, which is situated at the bottom of the Malvern Hills. Although it does appear that most of the people are travelling in cars on this occasion. And so we get everything out. It's a site near East Nor Castle, a place which was owned by one time by the family of Lord Somers, who was one of the early Chief Scouts. The following day is Sunday, and we prepare for Scout Zone. And then a trip around the castle. Scouts could visit the castle without payment because of the connection via Lord Somers. And so we had a pleasant day around East Nor Castle. On the actual campsite there were deer, and one in particular that had been hand reared, which caused us quite a lot of problems because it frequently raided our food supplies and stole from them. One of these is that deer. So we set off on a hike along the Malvern Hills. There's David Chettle, Mark Webb, amongst others. And it's quite late when we get back this particular day. We've mistimed our adventure, and here's this deer that we managed to. In fact, it was Jack Shettle managed to lasso it. It raided the store at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. He got up in his pyjamas, wrestled with it, and was very badly bruised by it. He certainly found out how strong a deer was, but I think it took the lesson and never once again tried to steal our food supplies. One time it actually tried to drag out a 56-pound bag of sugar onto the grass. I think it was during that Jack attacked it. Another of his escapades was a pigeon, and we might hear more of that later, but here he is feeding some ducks. A visit to a local signalling box, and the owner of it is explaining how it all works in order to keep the trains running safely. And many were allowed to have a go at moving the points. And then we catch a train, and we notice when we get to our destination a name that related to one of our leaders. This was to see the history of Worcester porcelain, and we went round the factory there to see how it was all made. And then had our usual packed lunch. We had some guides camping pretty close to us, so we joined them for a campfire one time. It was a beautiful location with a lake in the bottom of the valley, and that was the source of many activities. Time for badges to be presented. In the background are the canoes that we took in order to take part in these water activities, although that wasn't the only thing that we used. And of course the usual inspections. Some were better at it than others. David Chettle. And to make sure people could cope, Scouts were given the opportunity to see how they could cope if their canoe about turned and they were in the water. And then we set up a aerial walkway, a bridge at the side of the lake. The problem with these is getting enough tension on the rope so that when it's used it doesn't sag too much. Simon Webb, and yet someone else doing a roll around in their canoe to make sure they know how to get out if they have to. Mark Webb is the first across. And here's Jack making some adjustments and about to almost fall off. But here he's just larking about, although it goes a bit too far at one point. Some very tentative steps for one of the younger ones. And then Skip has a go. Skip wasn't too good with heights. I think that's David Aitchison. No, not David. One of the Aitchisons anyway. Tony, more likely. Having got to the end, you then had to get down, and sometimes that was just a simple job. If all else fails, there's always dead man's crawl. And this was a safety procedure, putting 5 canoes close together so someone theoretically could walk across them. But gradually all were trained in the art of getting out of an overturned canoe, although some found it more difficult than others. And here's Cub Scout David Day doing the same thing. And then Arcala, it was her turn, but they were only messing about, they didn't actually dunk her. Here's Helen. We had quite a lot of activities on or around the lake. It wasn't just scouts that had to do a safety role. On that occasion Jack managed to roll right over a couple of times. The deer were still close to us, but we managed not to have too much trouble from them. The problem with that one deer is that it had been hand reared, so it wasn't afraid of humans. And the usual scrap. Cleaning and gutting fish. This is how tame this deer was, even after it had been wrestled to the ground by Jack Shettle. Although I think the deer fared better than Jack. And then on one occasion he went for a walk, Jack went for a walk and spotted a racing pigeon with a ring on it that had come down. Realizing that that wasn't much use to anybody who owned a racing pigeon, he wrung its neck and we cooked it. It was rather tough. but there were always the jacket potatoes to eat, and more deer chasing. And then each of the patrols was challenged to make a 1-minute movie, and here they are preparing titles for it. It's rather wet now, and we're off on a hike. Up on the Malverns. We went virtually the whole length of the Malverns, which was quite a long walk, but there was still rain about, as we can see from this rainbow. We're looking down onto the town of Malvern, and there's Jack Shettle climbing a rainbow. You can see from here the full extent of the Malvern range, and we walked virtually to the far end of it, by which time it was pretty well dark. About halfway along the Malverns, a road goes over the top of it, and in this location is this hotel, and we all stopped there for half a pint of lemonade. It was already getting somewhat dim, and we still had a long way to go. British camp is basically an ancient site here of mounds and so forth, that dates from Bronze Age times. Down there is the lake, so we can see how far we've still got to go. In fact, in the end, Jack Shettle gave David, who was still only a Cub Scout, a lift back on his shoulders. The sun is almost setting, so as we carry on walking, we're now silhouettes. Back at camp, some axe work. This is all to make rafts using tanks, plastic tanks, and staves lashed together. It may look easy, but once they get into the water, they behave rather differently to that on land, and can very quickly disassemble themselves, as the scouts found out. But meanwhile, a stop for lunch. Pancakes. And then back to the task in hand. Some of them look very grand, but a few minutes in the water and some of the tanks just float off, and gradually you find yourself getting lower and lower in the water, and they don't behave like they should do. This one's just about at the end before it collapses, and it looked very, very sound before. they did manage to get to the shore in it, but I'm not sure whether Skip actually made that one or whether somebody just persuaded him to stand up on it, but it was pretty stable, except when it was rocked. Virtually the whole day was spent making and using these rafts. There were various repairs at times, and eventually a race around the island in the middle of the lake. All sorts of propulsion systems. And there's the finishing line. The winners. At least the canoes were sound. And here we had a competition, sort of a slalom between the tanks, which were stretched out across the width of the lake. And some were pretty good, particularly David Shettle. He's David Shettle. Is David Day not doing too badly either, and considering he wasn't even Scout age. Water activity certainly formed quite a big chunk of this camp. And then a joint activity with the guides. That went down very well. No flagpoles here, the trees were used instead. And then the guides came and did an inspection. And they were pretty thorough. The leader went round with the guides as well. And as far as I remember, afterwards there was a reversal, and the scouts went over to the guide camp and inspected them. And this is the scouts now inspecting the guide camp. They'd hoped to try and find as many pieces of litter as they could.
Another interjection from me. This was the camp that Mark Webb taught me how to find litter. I specifically remember him giving me the assignment of cleaning our grass area, after which He promptly went around after I said I'd finished and picked up 1.5 handfuls of additional litter, to which I felt rather embarrassed.
Mark had learnt from many camps of what I would do with an inspection, and all the hiding places, in addition to grass, underground sheets and all sorts of places. This was the nearest town, a couple of miles from the campsite, and we went out there into that town and wandered around there on one day. We certainly, unlike other camps like the Channel Islands where we stayed in camp and did a lot of activities, there was also always a lot of activity outside of camp on this. And here the scouts are looking rather apprehensive because they've been followed by a herd of cows. There was a demonstration of how strong this gateway was. And someone else being staked out, and tomato ketchup applied. It was all done in good fun, and I don't think anybody ever got seriously hurt by such things. And this time it was Skip who was staked out as well. Well, it was time to start gathering things together. The time for the end of camp had come. Careful inspection, because this was a well-used campsite, and so we made every effort to leave it in a fit state for someone else later on. And so off went the vehicle. There was a plaque just saying that Baden-Powell had visited this site in 1957 at the occasion of the World Scout Jamboree in Sutton Coldfield. The flag is lowered. The vehicle's already left with the equipment, and now it's cars off and all the individuals back to Bristol, 55 miles away.